I'm standing here at the English Channel where just a few short years ago aviation history was made. Back in 1959, British industry magnate Henry Kramer had a vision. What if man could develop an airplane that could fly solely under human power? Of course, he wasn't the first to come up with this idea, but he thought he could help the process along, so he established the Kramer Prize. He offered the princely sum of £100,000, or about $2.6 million, for the first person who could fly across the English Channel under human power. That's about 20 miles. 18 years went by and dozens of teams tackled the challenge, but all of them failed. It seemed like an impossible task. Well, then this guy Paul MacCready comes along, and he looked at the problem, and he looked at how the teams were trying to solve it, and he came to the stunned realization that they were trying to solve the wrong problem. Famously, he said, "The problem is we don't understand the problem." What MacCready noticed was that these teams would spend upwards of a year building a plane based on their theories and calculations. Then they would drag it out of the hangar for a test flight, and moments later it would be a pile of wreckage when it failed. It would then take them another year to modify their calculations and rebuild the plane based on that single experience and have another go at it. They might get a little further, but they would fail again. Progress was incredibly slow. What MacCready realized was that developing human-powered flight wasn't the problem. The problem was with the process. It was taking too long between test flights. So he came up with a better problem to solve: how to design a plane that can be built and tested in hours, not months. By focusing on finding a better process to build planes quickly, he could test and improve at a much faster rate than everyone else. His planes were built of mylar, aluminum tubing, and wire, and the first ones didn't even work. But he was able to rebuild and retest within hours, sometimes flying 3 or 4 planes in a single day. With his better understanding of the problem and rapid accumulation of experience, MacCready and his team designed and flew in only 6 months the Gossamer Albatross, which won a smaller Kramer Prize. And only a year after that, they built the Gossamer Condor, which successfully flew across the English Channel under human power. Figuring out the actual problem you need to solve is the first step in the problem-solving process. It's the most important step, but it's also the one we most often get wrong. History is filled with examples of people wasting effort and resources trying to solve the wrong problem. They end up tired and poorer, but no closer to the solution they were seeking. And there are a number of pitfalls that come along with this step. If you fall into one of them, you run the risk of pointing your team in the wrong direction and facing failure when you come out the other end. The first trap is immediately assuming you already know what the problem is. But what's apparent to the eye isn't always the root problem that needs to be solved. Often problems are simply symptoms of something else that really needs to get fixed. It's kind of like taking NyQuil. It might make your cough and runny nose go away for a while, maybe help you sleep, but it doesn't cure the common cold. They haven't cracked the code on that one yet. Make sure you're treating the problem, not the symptom. Another trap is jumping straight to a solution because you think you know what the answer is. Maybe you do, but maybe you don't. Ever heard that saying that if all you have is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail? That's what we're talking about here. Pretty soon you're going around using that hammer for screws and bolts and your car and your laptop. Just possibly you could be making things worse instead of better. Sometimes the hammer's the right tool. Other times you might need something like a screwdriver or some pliers. Another pitfall is the activity trap, or what statisticians call a type 3 error. You're busy doing stuff, but it's not stuff that's going to solve the problem. People tend to think that if they are busy, they are making progress. But that's not always the case. Kind of like the guy who's straightening the deck chairs on the Titanic as it slowly goes down. He's busy, but he's not focused on the right problem. It's important not to skip this step, or you could find yourself in these same kinds of traps. So how do you go about this all-important first step? Well, there's a number of ways, but the thing to remember is try and keep it simple. One way I like to do this is to follow the advice of author and leadership expert Stephen R. Covey and begin with the end in mind, which really just amounts to asking yourself in the simplest possible terms, what exactly are you trying to accomplish? What is the basic need that you're trying to fulfill? What's the desired outcome? What does success look like? Maybe for breakfast you want buttered toast, but your butter's frozen. For now, just focus on the desired end state, butter on toast. How it gets there is what we figure out in the other step. A second approach to help you get to the bottom of the problem is to use the 5 whys method made popular by Toyota. There's nothing fancy about it. Really all you do is be like your annoying kid brother and ask the question why 5 times, and eventually you get to the root of the problem. It might go something like this. Hey, the customers are complaining.
Why?
Well, it smells gross in here.
Why?
Maybe because there's a dead lizard in the air vent.
Why?
Well, probably because he crawled in through that hole.
Why?
Because no maintenance has been done for 8 years.
Why?
Well, because no one was specifically named to do the preventive maintenance after Fred Jones left. As you can see, just spraying some aerosol to kill the odor doesn't solve the real problem. And next time, the thing in your air vent might be bigger and nastier. Better put someone in charge of maintenance so you won't have this problem again. Whatever method you use to determine what the real problem is, in the end, it's a good idea to restate it as clearly and succinctly as you can. A good problem statement will focus you and your team on solving the right problem and not wasting time and energy. In the problem statement, try and answer the 5 W's: who, what, where, when, and why. Don't have any assumptions built in there yet, and don't look at the how. That comes later. MacCready's problem statement for winning the Kramer Prize might have sounded something like this. At this airfield, with my engineering team, in the next 6 months, design a human-powered airplane that can be assembled, flown, and repaired within 1 day, in order to win the first Kramer prize. You know, right now there's a $20 million X Prize out there for anyone who could launch, land, and operate a rover on the surface of the moon. If we get our problem statement right, we might just have a shot. So the next time you're faced with a problem, do yourself a favor. Take a moment, do step one, and make sure you really know what the problem is. And if you do this first step right, you'll be well on the path to finding a solution to your problem. If it was good enough for Einstein, it's good enough for us. Thanks for watching.